Okay, so good evening everyone. So my task is to present to you the fixed overhead variances. So many organizations also analyze fixed manufacturing and overhead variances. Manufacturing companies are required to assign fixed manufacturing overhead cost to products for final reporting purposes. This is called absorption costing, which was discussed in our last discussion. It is common for companies to apply fixed manufacturing overhead cost to products based on direct labor hours, machine hours, or some other activity. Companies using a standard costing system apply fixed overhead based on a standard amount per unit produced. Next slide. Okay, let's take a look. Let's focus our attention to Jerry's ice cream to illustrate the computation of fixed overhead spending and production volume variances. So Jerry's ice cream has the following fixed manufacturing overhead information. So budgeted fixed overhead cost has $140,000 to $80 divided by 20,040 hours budgeted direct labor hours. Standard cost per direct labor hours is $7 per hour or $7 per hour. Standard direct labor hours per unit is 10.10 hours. Actual production is 210,000 units. Actual fixed overhead cost 136,000. For standard fixed manufacturing overhead cost can also be stated on a per unit basis as follows. Standard cost per direct labor hour is $7. Standard direct labor hours per unit 10.10. Standard fixed overhead cost per unit is 70.70 cents. Okay, so this is the fixed overhead variance summary. The fixed overhead spending variance is the difference between actual and budgeted fixed overhead cost. The fixed overhead production volume variance is the difference between the budgeted and applied fixed overhead cost. So, in this illustration, the direct labor budget is 20,040. Budgeted direct labor hours is equal to 200,400 units budgeted to be produced by 0.10 direct labor hours per unit. Standard hours of 20,000 is derived from the actual units produced by multiplying the actual units produced and sold by standard of 0.10 hours per unit. So 140,000 to 80 is the original budget presented in the manufacturing overhead budget shown in the previous slide. So the flexible budget amount for fixed overhead does not change with changes in production, so this amount remains the same regardless of actual production. The 4,000 to 80 favorable fixed overhead spending variance is taken from 136,000 actual fixed overhead cost minus the 140,000 to 80, which is the flexible budget fixed overhead cost. Variance is favorable, if you notice, because the actual fixed overhead costs are lower than the budgeted cost. Now, let's take a look on the $6,720. It is considered as favorable fixed overhead volume variance. It is taken from 140,000 to 80 flexible budget fixed overhead cost minus the 147,000, which is the fixed overhead cost applied. Variance is favorable because the volume of goods produced and sold was higher than expected. Okay. So this is the other way of getting the fixed overhead variance using the alternative equation. So key equation, fixed overhead spending variance is equal to actual cost minus budgeted cost. And the fixed overhead spending variance in the previous slide, the actual cost is 136,000 minus the budgeted cost of 140,000 to 80. The difference is 4,000 to 80. Variance is considered favorable. Okay, so let's take a look on the variance analysis and management by exception. How do I know which variance is to investigate? And larger variances in amount or as a percentage of the standard are investigated first. So we have this what we call advantages of standard cost. Okay, so if you look at the illustration, based on research, it has shown that substantial portion of companies in various countries use standard cost system. This is because the standard cost system offer many advantages, including standard costs are a key element of the management by exception approach, which helps the manager focus their attention on the most important issues. Standards that are viewed as reasonable by employees can serve as benchmarks that promote economy and efficiency. On this illustration also, we can learn that standard cost can greatly simplify bookkeeping, and standard cost fit naturally into a responsibility accounting system.